While waiting for the rotor to come back, I set about learning what else I could about the Super 10, starting with a look at the brake light. When I tested it, it was indicating continuous contact. So I pulled it off to see if I could get it working. After spraying it with some WD-40, it seemed to be working again. So I hooked it back up and adjusted it to my satisfaction. Then I started to look at the throttle twist grip. This is held on by a sprung insert that threads into the end of the handlebar. Unscrewing it and sliding the grip off reveals the sliding plug that's attached to the end of the cable. There is a pin and there are supposed to be two rollers. One rolls along the slot in the handlebar, while the other rotates along a spiral slot in the grip. As you can see, only one of the rollers is present here, so I've ordered another. I expect I'll have to pull the throttle cable out eventually to clean and lubricate it, and I would also like to try and figure out the horn wiring at some point, but for now at least, I don't have a horn, just the button. Then it was on to the front end. I wanted to do a bit of investigation of the front wheel and the forks. In order to do this, I needed to first take off the front wheel. In order to do that, I needed to figure out some sort of stand to get the front wheel off the ground while still allowing me to move the bike around the garage. As I've mentioned previously, I'm no Adam Savage, but I was able to cobble something together and can now take off the front wheel. This is my neighbor Frank. My garage door is always open for his drop-by visits. He's a fellow motorcycle enthusiast and always has some stories to tell. He grew up doing a lot of off-road riding in and around the Columbia River Gorge and knew a lot of the local racers. At one point, he owned a service station in Stevenson, and at another, he was an IndyCar mechanic. I don't know how many races he worked, but I know one of them was the 1966 Indy 500, where he was a mechanic on the number 96 Harris Special, before it was unfortunately rear-ended on lap 1. Today, because the Kawasaki H2 came up, he was reminiscing about those. It's a little bit hard to hear at points, so I'll do my best to transcribe.
Started drinking in Vancouver, and then once, I don't know if one of them was from, do you know where White Salmon is? Benton?
Yeah. Yep.
They would ride, there was a bar up there they liked, and the gorge is a beautiful ride anyway, even though it's, a lot of it's straight now. But they straighten out all the really fun corners. But anyway, they would drink and race to White Salmon and drink up there and then race back. And he had totaled his first H2 on one of those.
Oh, man.
And with the insurance money, he bought a brand new one and had, but he bought the old, the wreck from the insurance company. And I can't remember now which, he was keeping one and selling one. Anyway, that's the reason I met him. But, and I had Gary Capus was one of the best riders in Northwest flat track PT at that time. And Gary had one of those. He was actually, him and my friend Buzzy were the mechanics for Joe Dobbins, the Kawasaki distributor for the Pacific Northwest. He didn't just have a dealership in Portland, but he if some other dealer in Idaho sold a Kawasaki in Washington, Joe got a cut. It was one of those deals. Yeah. He was an interesting guy. He'd been one of the pilots flying stuff over the Burma during WW2.
Wow.
You know, a lot of those guys didn't get to come home and tell the story.
Yeah.
But he did, and with a pint of whiskey in him, he'd keep telling him. But anyway, Gary bought one of those H2s from a customer, his wife, because the customer was in the hospital, and the wife says,
"It's gotta go."
He's not going to get back on that thing. And I went to the Rose Cup races, motorcycle race, and there was 5 or 7, it seemed like not, anyway, 5 or 7 of those H2s out in the super sports, or the top class for the back then. Road race. So I'll put 2 nuts on and then tap out the back one.
Mm-hmm.
That way, this is probably just a regular. You could replace bolt anyway, right?
Yeah. Whew. That was on there pretty snug. Spacer. Speedo cable. Does that fit through that one?
What cable is it? You said brake cable?
Speedo. Yeah, yep. Alright, I gotta figure out how to unhook the cable down here before I can take it out.
Actually, you should just be able to buy the cable, shouldn't you, if you've got the ends?
I don't have the ends.
Oh.
It was completely missing. But yeah.
I remember when it was obvious that the price of copper had gone way up. All of a sudden you're starting.
There is a grease fitting here with an extended backside that locks the Speedo cable into the brake housing. With the fitting out, the Speedo should just slide out, but it was locked in place. After a lot of patient spraying, wiggling, and a few curse words, I got it worked free. Without the additional torque arm provided by the wheel, I couldn't get the Speedo cable to rotate at all. The old grease had pretty much solidified, so it had to be loosened and cleaned off. I was using kerosene as a degreaser. It was once again a tedious process, but eventually I worked the Speedo gear free and was able to pull the cable out of its outer casing. Unfortunately, the cable outer has a bit of damage, and there was also a little damage at the end where it attaches to the speedometer. I cleaned it all as well as I could and got rid of the old grease, and now it turns easily, and the bit of cable damage doesn't appear to affect operation. Having previously removed the headlight and front bodywork, it was time to remove the forks. The forks are relatively simple and straightforward to take apart. For some reason, this one had some oil in it, but the other was dry. was kind of a messy process cleaning this up, but I think I've got it as cleaned up as I'm going to. I could try and fight real hard and get the bushings out, but I don't think it's going to be worth it. So I've just got those cleaned up as much as I can, and hopefully the new oil is going to function just fine. The fork lower cleaned up pretty nice. One of the interesting, although I do need to replace this bolt because this bolt was bent, which is why I was having trouble getting it out before. A couple of interesting things about this assembly. The the spring is actually treated like a screw, so it attaches to the bottom there, and at the top it screws onto the cap. And that basically holds the fork assembly together. Kind of unique. I've never seen that before. Another thing that's kind of neat, a little bit different on these forks, is this cap, or this bolt that goes into the cap, is designed to measure oil. You're supposed to fill up the cup with oil every so often, according to maintenance, and dump it into the top of the fork. I've got new fork seals on the way. I need to get some new boots. I didn't realize how shredded this one was. And yeah, now I've got to do the other one. At the end of the day, I got some good news about my rotor as well. The magnetic field tested at 21 Gauss, which was below the spec minimum of 25, so the magnets were definitely weak. But after a turn in the recharging device, they were testing at 31 G, so I'm looking forward to having a nice fat spark when it gets back. Thanks for watching.